These are the top 50 variety coins worth money that you can look for from 1960 all the way through to 2009, starting with the 2000s and working our way back for each decade. And the first coin we'll look at is a somewhat underappreciated Lincoln cent variety from 2006. Strictly speaking, a double die obverse coin, but due to the nature of the class 8 doubling and how it displays on the coin, it has at times adopted the moniker of the 2006 doubled ear variety. This due to the lowermost portion of the earlobe being doubled in the space just southwest of its intended position. In addition to this, the lower portion of the beard is also doubled, although this is a little more difficult to spot initially as it merely appears as a continuation of the design pattern to the untrained eye. However, on your left is a normal coin from the same date, and by comparison you can clearly see the difference on Lincoln's jawline. A coin like this was sold in 2019, graded by PCGS as MS65 Red for the sum of $250, although most price guides would reasonably list the value of this coin at less than half as much. Our next coin is the 2004 Philly Mint Peace Medal, or Louisiana Purchase, or as NGC tries to call it, the handshake nickel. Now this coin trips up a lot of people, and to be fair, it is not the most obvious variety to begin with. There is moderate doubling on the letters of In God We Trust, Liberty, as well as on the date, that will mostly only display as additional thickness to the letters or numbers. Ideally, you will come across an early die state example where you can clearly see the doubling, and a good place to look for it will be on the date, as well as the word trust of In God We Trust. However, in all probability, that won't be the case, and you can expect to find a later die state example, such as this coin. When you look at the date, separation lines can be seen towards the right of the numbers, especially on the zeros, and the upright portion of the 4 as well tends to display this detail the strongest. Now, I chose this specific coin to highlight another issue that may occur. This right here, what you are seeing to the top of the date, this is not true doubling. This is, however, strike doubling, or mechanical or machine doubling. It's die bounce, and it is not worth anything. It is a curiosity at best and damage at worst. It's worth its most as an educational tool to demonstrate that just because a coin is a double die variety, that does not mean automatically that it can't also have machine doubling or vice versa. So just keep that in mind. Another place to look for doubling is the word trust, where you can see separation lines towards the left of most of the letters, as well as a split on the ends of the serifs. This is especially strong on the bottom tip of the S, and here again, this is strike doubling. So just remember that just because one is present, it doesn't automatically exclude the other. Here we have an example sold online in 2019, graded by PCGS as MS65 for $395. So 2004 was actually a very good year for variety collectors and coin roll hunters, while with the coin in the number 8 position being a 2004 Lincoln cent. More to the point, a 2004 double die reverse variety coin. Now, to be clear, there are plenty of varieties to be found for the 2004 penny, but we are only going to be taking a look at the main FS801 variety. In this coin, the doubling is expressed best as additional thickness in the letters of United States of America, as well as the motto of E Pluribus Unum, which admittedly means it is a little difficult to spot offhand at times. However, there are a few dead giveaways that you can look out for that will definitely help to identify the variety. The tail of the second S in states should be split or forked at its very tip. Something that is easy to look for and is a true sign of doubling are the three dots that separate the words e pluribus unum. Now, they should appear elongated or like two dots were stamped right next to each other. If you notice these things, then you can go ahead and verify with the rest of the letters to see if they display additional thickness, especially towards the vertical portions of the words. Comparing a known normal coin to your suspected variety should reveal the differences in short order, as seen here with these two examples. In terms of value, the coin is certainly gaining in popularity, and in 2019, a coin like this, graded as PCGS MS66 Red, sold for $353. Alright, so the coin we discover in the number 7 position is technically not a mere single variety, but rather a large number of related variety coins all discovered on the same design type, that I'll be grouping together here for the sake of simplicity. The 2005 Minnesota State Quarter Extra Tree variety. If you'd like to see a more in-depth video about these specific varieties, then please let me know in the comments, as there is rather a lot to unpack on this one. However, of the literal dozens of more technical varieties to discover for this design, the best you can hope for is to discover one of the bolder double-die reverse coins that all display an additional tree in the forest towards the horizon. Again, comparing it to a known normal coin would be the best way to differentiate the varieties from one another. Now, this variety can be detected on both P and D mint-marked coins, so be sure to cast a wide net if you are in fact looking for these. In 2018, a PCGS graded MS66 example of the FS802 variety was sold at auction for $336. Remaining with the venerable state quarter for the time being, we can then turn our attention to 2007 and the Wyoming quarter this time, especially the Philadelphia mint issue, where there are again double-die reverse varieties waiting to be discovered for the eagle-eyed and well-informed collector. Much as with the previous coin as well, there are a number of different varieties to be found on this design, but fortunately the point of interest remains largely similar between these, as the doubling occurs largely around the saddle horn, with either the very tip doubled towards the south, as on the example here, or the neck of the horn being doubled entirely eastwards in other cases. In 2014, a coin like this, graded as MS66 by PCGS, was sold at auction for $446.50. Although in most cases you could find coins like this trading for, well, less than half of that today. And so we find ourselves at the halfway mark on this list, and there, with the second of two Jefferson nickel varieties on the list, now makes its appearance. It is a fairly well-known named variety at that, a 2005 D speared bison nickel. This variety can be found on the Denver mint example of the coin, the name stemming from the die gouge that appears on the reverse design of some coins. A line reaching from the E of states all the way through the belly of the beast, making it appear as though it had been skewered by a spear. The name really does explain it all. This is an extremely popular variety coin though, and one that regularly sells for large sums of money. But in 2016, a PCGS graded MS66 example was sold at auction for $763.75. By 2008, the State Quarter Series had run its course, but it had proven so popular that the decision was taken to extend the series by another year in order to include the US districts and territories as well. And fortunately for us, as it gave us yet another spectacular variety coin to search for as well, in the form of the 2009 D. District of Columbia Duke Ellington Double Die Reverse Variety. On this coin, there is fairly bold doubling on the letters E-L-L of Ellington, with entire elements of the letters doubled completely towards the south, and actually blending into the piano keys, which themselves are in turn also doubled in part, along with elements of the very piano itself in a largely diagonal direction as indicated here. The auction record for this particular variety was set in 2014 when a PCGS graded MS66 example was sold at the Summer Fun Show of that particular year for $3,055. The second runner-up for this list is a coin from the first year of issue of the Sacagawea dollar, and as such is just barely manages to squeeze its way into this list at the very beginning of the decade. This is the 2000p Wounded Eagle dollar coin. Now, much like the speared bison that was already discussed earlier, this is again the result of a diagonal die gouge that transects the eagle's belly and flank just underneath its outstretched wing, giving it the appearance of a speared or wounded eagle. This is a variety that remains very popular and indeed valuable despite the fact that the population figures have been steadily increasing over the past decade. 2018, for example, saw the auction of a PCGS graded MS68 example of this piece that sold for $3,720. Then, in the number 2 slot is also the final coin from 2004 on this list, and also the last coin where I will be taking the liberty of grouping technically a number of different varieties into a single listing for the sake of not overcomplicating matters too much. On the 2004 D Wisconsin State Quarter, you could find two fairly bold variety coins. Turn your attention on this coin's design towards the corn husk, just behind the wheel of cheese, and on the variety coin you will see an extra leaf just behind the wheel of cheese towards the left of the corn husk. This is known as the extra leaf low variety. The other example that you would want to look for is the extra leaf high variety, where there is an additional leaf positioned slightly higher on the design. In early January of 2020, a PCGS graded MS67 example of the extra leaf low type was sold at auction for $6,000. And then finally, the top coin is another Sacagawea dollar from the year 2000 once again. This time though, it is the so-called Cheerios dollar, awarded this particular name after the coins were included in a promotion with General Mills Company where 5,500 coins were individually included in selected boxes of Cheerios breakfast cereal as a part of a special promotion. It was then discovered that these coins possessed additional details in the tail feathers that was not seen on either the proof coins or the regular issue coins for circulation from that year either, making this a somewhat legendary rarity within the series that is entirely pulled from circulation by collectors and coin roll hunters alike. In 2020, a very attractive example of this particular variety, graded as PCGS MS68, was sold at auction and managed to raise $10,200. One that is often and easily overlooked, and it's easy to understand why as well, as the Class 2 doubling on this coin is one of the hardest types of hub doubling to correctly identify, and in this case the doubling is unusually close as well. Furthermore, this 1995 S Washington Quarter is found exclusively in 1995 proof sets, and is highly unlikely to pop up in pocket change as well. Look towards the bottom rounding of the number 9 of the date to spot the extremely faint doubling. The S mint mark is also affected by the distorted hub doubling, as by this point the US Mint had begun placing mint marks on the coining hubs instead of the individual working dies themselves. themselves. During 2022, a PCGS example of this variety coin in a grade of MS68 was sold at auction for $192. Next in line is another proof-only variety and the first coin to look for in the 1990 proof set. This time though, this is the 1990S proof Jefferson nickel, and we have a very attractive double-to-die obverse coin. This coin is difficult to obtain and can fetch a very decent premium when sold. Look for the signs of the pivoted hub doubling on the letters of "In God We Trust." Here it should display as medium but very clear doubling towards the left of all of the letters. Since the pivot point is towards the right of the coin, near the 3 o'clock position, the rest of the design remains largely unaffected by the doubling in this case. For this coin, we look towards an example sold at auction in 2022, graded as PCGS Proof 69 Deep Cameo for $528. Sticking with the 1990 proof set for the time being, and I swear not all of the coins on this list are proof coins, it just so happens to be that the first few happen to fall into that category. This is the 1990S Proof Washington Quarter that displays Class 5 obverse hub doubling. Attractive spread can be noticed towards the left of all of the numbers and the date, as well as some very good doubling on the mint mark of the coin, as well as some less obvious but still very good doubling on the very tip of Washington's hair tie ribbon. There have been surprisingly few of these varieties discovered or reported to date, so get busy checking those 1990 proof sets if you have them. Here we have a coin graded as Proof 68 Deep Cameo by PCGS that was sold in 2020 for $360. Although we can also point to a Proof 70 Deep Cameo example that was sold in 2010 for $7,050, but I'm sure you can understand that that is somewhat of an outlier case. Our first Lincoln penny enters the fray now, also our first entry from the Denver Mint in the form of a 1995 D Lincoln cent. Holding true to forms so far, this is also a double die obverse variety, but it is by far the strongest doubling that we've seen on this list, well, at least up until this point, with strong doubling on the letters of In God We Trust, where it displays towards the right of the letters. It displays in an especially pleasing manner on the We Trust section of the legend. There is also doubling on the date and mint mark, both, although to a far lesser degree than the doubling on the In God We Trust section, to be sure. In 2023, a PCGS graded MS66 red example was sold at auction for the sum of $900. But the record for this coin still belongs to the MS67 red specimen that was sold at auction in 2019 for an astounding $4,200. And while on the topic of 1995 penny varieties, then I would be seriously reticent not to mention the famous 1995 double die obverse Lincoln cent as well. This is the more broadly publicized Philadelphia Mint variety for this year. In this case, the doubling is also most noticeable on In God We Trust, but here the doubling displays strongest in the In God section instead. In addition to this, there is also some rather pleasing doubling on the letters of Liberty, where the doubling is displayed towards the top of the respective letters of that word. 2019 was the year in which a PCGS graded MS69 red example of this coin was sold at auction for an unusually heady $4,560. From there, we head to just the year prior to find the 1994 double die reverse Lincoln cent, the first coin on this list to have had the variety display on the reverse of the coin instead. In this case, what you want to look for is doubling on the columns of the memorial building. Pay particular attention to the final two columns, where the final bay should have practically a full column doubled inside it, as as indicated here. In 2020, a PCGS example with the grade of MS67 red was sold at auction for the sum of $1,560. Moving across to 1997 for now to find another Lincoln cent variety coin that you can discover in pocket change in the form of the 1997 double die obverse variety, better known perhaps by its more popular moniker as simply the 1997 double ear cent. As the name would suggest, you would want to look specifically at Lincoln's ear on this coin, where you can see very strong doubling due south of the earlobe, to the degree that this portion of the design is almost doubled completely towards the south. Here we have a coin that was sold in 2021, housed in a PCGS slab with the grade of MS67 red. It attained a closing price at auction of $1,020. And then it's a Kennedy half-dollar coin that brings us past the halfway point on this list, where we can find a double die obverse example of the 1992 S silver proof coin, the first year in which the mint started to resume minting 90% silver coins for sale specifically to the numismatic market. On this coin, doubling is best spotted on the serifs of the letters of "In God We Trust." Separation lines should be clearly noted on the bottom of most letters. The T and the R of trust are typically the most reliable place to look first. This variety remains rare, with relatively few examples appearing very intermittently, such as a Proof 69 deep cameo example sold at auction in 2016 for $2,585. Jumping to the end of the decade from there, we can point to the very next variety coin in the form of the 1999 Wide AM Lincoln cent. This is arguably one of the least appreciated coins of this nature. On this coin, there is a wider than what would be considered normal for the issue gap between the A and M of America on the reverse of the coin. The easiest way to identify this coin is simply to compare and contrast it with a normal or close AM example from the same year. A very popular type with collectors though, and in 2020 a PCGS graded MS68 red example was sold at auction for $4,583. Sticking with 1999 for the time being, and we have a rather interesting variety to look at next, and not to mention the only gold coin on this list. This is the 1999 W mint marked gold eagles, specifically the 10th ounce half eagle and the quarter ounce gold eagle. Now these are strictly speaking bullion coins, as they are business strike examples, but they do appear with the W mint mark for the West Point mint, and by rights all the West Point gold eagles should be proof, as until 2006 the only gold American eagles produced at West Point were proofs. So the fact that these coins have the W mint mark and were apparently struck from unfinished proof dies makes them a notable variety for the issue, and significantly more valuable as such. In 2023, the 1/10 of an ounce half eagle was sold at auction graded as MS70 for $2,520, while the example of the quarter ounce eagle was sold the year prior for $5,760 in the same grade. And then, from the end of the decade right back to the very beginning, and the last coin to search for from the 1990 proof set is seen here now. This is the very well-known 1990 No S proof penny. Since the 1990 proof sets were exclusively minted at the San Francisco Mint, there should be an S mint mark on all proof coins from this set, and yet, on a very small amount of pennies that managed to escape the mint, this design detail was omitted. The coin is extremely popular and, as such, very easy to sell if you should find one. And in 2022, a PCGS graded Proof 69 red deep cameo example was sold at auction for the sum of $6,300. From there, we move ahead to 1992 and one of the best-known varieties for the decade, the 1992 Close AM Memorial Cent. You remember a few coins back we looked at the Wide AM penny from 1999. Well, this is basically the exact opposite of that. On this coin, the gap between the A and the M in America is much narrower than it should be, to the point that the two letters almost touch each other at their respective base. Another way to tell the Close and Wide AM coins apart for this year is to check the designer's initials, where on the Close AM coin, the G of FG has no serif, or simply just a straight vertical bar instead of there being a flag pointing inwards at all. This variety exists for both the Philadelphia Mint and Denver Mint coins in 1992. That is to say that coins with the D mint mark and coins with no mint mark as well, although the Philadelphia Mint coin tends to be the more valuable in general. But before we get to that, I should point out that there is also a similar Close AM variety known for the 1998 S proof cent as well. It uses the same exact points of interest or pickup points as just described, but here it is found on the proof 1998 penny. In 2020, an example of that proof coin was sold at auction, housed in a PCGS slab with a grade of proof 70 deep cameo red for $3,840. But back to the circulating or pocket change coins right now. First up is the Denver coin, where we can point to an auction appearance from 2019 where a PCGS graded MS66 red coin was sold for $12,000. And in 2020, a 1992 Close AM coin from the Philadelphia Mint was sold, slabbed as PCGS MS64 red brown for $22,800. A 1988 S Kennedy $half coin. Now this coin you'll have to look for in the 1988 proof set. This double die obverse variety has very slight counterclockwise pivoted hub doubling on the obverse of the coin. It displays best in the letters of We Trust. Now again, the doubling here is not very strong, but that also means that for anyone who doesn't know what to look for, it can be easily overlooked, leaving the coin for you to cherry pick. Look mainly for notching in the serifs like the W, the E, and R, and separation lines on the bottom of the S, the leg of the R, and additional separation lines on the right side of the Y of Liberty. In 2021, a coin like this was sold at auction, housed in an NGC slab with the grade of proof 69 Ultra Cameo for $420. Now, the next variety coin is fortunately not a proof coin, but an actual circulation coin. This is the 1982 No P Roosevelt dime. On this coin, the customary P mint mark indicating the coin's origin at the Philadelphia Mint was mistakenly left off of the working die. Thousands of these coins managed to escape the mint before the mistake was noticed, and if you come across a 1982 dime, check to see if it has a small mint mark just above the date. It could be a P, a D, or even an S. But if there is no mint mark, then you have a rare coin worth some good money. In 2023, a 1982 No P dime in an NGC slab graded as MS67 with full bands attribution as well was sold at auction for $1,080. Then we have what is somewhat lesser known Lincoln cent variety coin from 1983. That is a real sleeper variety for those able to discover it. This is the FS 102 double die obverse variety for the 1983 penny. Clear doubling is evident on all of the numbers of the date, with separation lines being seen practically everywhere you look. Doubling is displayed mostly towards the south of the letters. Additional doubling should also be seen on the letters of Liberty, with the B being an especially good example of this. In 2023, one of these pennies sold at auction, authenticated by PCGS with a grade of MS66 red for the sum of $1,140. Repunched mint mark varieties from the 1980s can be challenging to collect. The 1987 Lincoln penny offers a chance for collectors and coin searchers to discover several of these varieties. This is definitely one of the nicer varieties of the sort, with the secondary D displaying towards the north of the primary impression. Although the way that the separate impressions were punched into the working die certainly gives it a unique appearance. For this coin, we have an auction appearance from 2021 when a PCGS graded MS67 red example was sold for $1,800. Our next coin is a rather well-known variety and a spectacular example of Class 4 hub doubling that can be seen on the obverse of this 1984 Lincoln Memorial cent. On this coin, the doubling displays towards the south of Lincoln's ear, giving it the impression or the appearance of an additional earlobe, therefore earning the coin's popular moniker of the 1984 double ear variety penny. In December of 2022, a PCGS graded example of this popular variety coin was sold at auction with a grade of MS68 red. It was able to attain a closing price of $2,400. Moving ahead to the previous year from there, this is the 1983 double die reverse variety for the Lincoln penny, an extremely well-known and daringly bold example of offset hub doubling that can be seen here. On the reverse of the coin, practically every single detail of the design is doubled to dramatic effect. Probably the most noticeable element would be those letters of 1 cent, followed in quick suit by the doubling on United States of America and the motto of E Pluribus Unum. Even the memorial building itself is doubled due south. In 2022, we saw the auction of an NGC graded MS68 red example of this coin for $2,640. Another Kennedy half dollar to look for is up for discussion now. This time, it is the 1982 no FG variety of the coin. You see, on most Kennedy half dollar coins, you'd come across the designer's initials of FG can be seen between the eagle's right-facing leg and the tail. This is perfectly normal, but on this variety, that particular detail is missing, much like the no P mint mark dime that we talked about earlier as well. So if you come across a Kennedy half dollar without the FG initials just to the right of the eagle's tail from 1982, or well, from any other date either, really, for that matter, be sure to set it aside, as it might be worth something. Like this 1982 no FG coin that was sold at auction in 2016, graded by PCGS as MS67, that sold for $2,820 when all was said and done. And then you'd be forgiven for a slight feeling of déjà vu when looking at our next entrant on this list, as this is another example of a double ear Lincoln penny, this time though from the 1988 run. On this coin, similar to the previously discussed coin from 1984, there is strong doubling towards the south of the details of Lincoln's ear that can be seen with minimal effort. And the wild thing is that there is even another variety similar to this in nature from 1983 as well, so be sure to keep an eye out for, well, all of these. Meanwhile, in 2020, a coin like this from 1988 was sold at auction slabbed by PCGS as MS66 red for the amount of $3,120. Our next entry is actually less of a variety coin and more of a transitional era coin. In 1982, the US Mint transitioned from 95% copper pennies to a copper-coated zinc core coin instead, as the pure copper planchets were simply becoming too expensive. The Denver Mint in particular was very careful not to strike any of the new small-date coins on older copper planchets, but inevitably a few were accidentally created. You can identify this coin firstly to see if it's copper. The older copper planchets had a weight of 3.1 grams, with the newer zinc coins only weighing 2.5 grams. Then it has to have the small date design and not the older large type. And it absolutely has to have the D-Mint mark as well. If you have all three of these markers, then, and only then, your coin is very valuable. One of these transitional alloy errors was sold in 2019. Housed in an NGC slab with the grade of AU58, it sold at auction for no less than $10,800. And then, leading off from that, we also have another transitional era coin that you really could be looking for in your pennies. This is the 1983 copper cent. Remember that from 1983 onwards, to this very day, the US Mint was only supposed to strike pennies on the newer zinc core planchets that only have a thin layer of copper cladding on the outside, and not the older 95% copper blanks. But just like it happened to the steel pennies in 1943, a few of these leftover coin blanks from 1982 managed to get mixed in with the new ones from 1983 and were then struck as normal coins. To test this, all you have to do is weigh the coin. If it is 2.5 grams, then it is the newer zinc core type coins and just a normal cent. But if any cent minted after 1982 has a weight of 3.1 grams, then it was struck on an older copper planchet and is very valuable. Just like this 1983D example that was sold at auction in 2017, slabbed by PCGS as AU55 for the sum of $17,625. The 1971 S doubled up this Lincoln cent, specifically the proof coin, for which there are actually multiple varieties known to exist. On this coin, you should pay particular attention to the letters of Liberty, as the doubling is definitely the strongest here, mostly displayed towards the right of the affected letters. The effect is particularly noticeable on the L and the B, with the I seemingly appearing twice just in between the two. NGC graded an example of this coin as Proof 69 Red Ultra Cameo, which was sold at auction in 2022 for the price of $3,600. By 1970, all proof coins and modern proof sets were produced exclusively at the newly revamped and equipped San Francisco Mint. As a direct consequence, all proof coins should by rights be branded with the S Mint mark to indicate their point of origin. On the Roosevelt dime, this should be placed just above the date and to the right of Roosevelt's neck truncation. But on a small number of coins that were all issued in the regular 1970 proof set, this feature was missing, as is the case for this coin. Graded by PCGS as Proof 69 Cameo, it was sold at auction in 2009 for the amount of $6,037. The Eisenhower Dollar Series is not exactly renowned for repunched mint mark varieties by any means. By my counts, there are, fewer than, I would say, half a dozen cases worth pursuing. This 1971 S over S dollar coin is one, if not the best of the lot. The secondary S is very faint on this coin, but can be seen peeking out directly towards the northwest of the primary S mint mark. Mostly, all you'll see is a glimpse of what was the upper rounding of the initial S impression. This PCGS graded MS67 example of this variety was sold at auction in 2016 for $8,812. Now, we just looked at the 1970 no S-proof dime. Well, in 1971, it was the turn of the Jefferson nickel in the proof set to be stripped of its S mint mark. Or at least it was in the case of a small number of coins. Here, again, the S mint mark for the San Francisco Mint was meant to be added just below the date and towards the right of Jefferson's hair tie. So, get searching those 1971 sets to see if you might be hiding one in your collection somewhere. This coin was graded by PCGS as a stunning Proof 69 deep cameo, and at auction in 2023, it raised no less than $8,100. Time now for our first, and truth be known, only Washington quarter dollar on this list, and this variety is found on the Drummer Boy or Bicentennial quarter dollar coin from the Denver Mint in 1976. But for this variety, turn your attention away from the reverse design and towards the obverse instead. Here, the doubling is detected on the letters of Liberty, just above Washington's head. The letters are all doubled towards their individual left, or towards the west, if you will, although the doubling on each letter becomes steadily more bolder as you progress from left to right. In 2023, an example of this variety graded by PCGS as MS66 was sold at auction for the sum of $8,400. Then, at the halfway point, we have what I can easily argue would be the best known variety for the decade. Definitely so when confining our attention to the Lincoln Cent series, the main 1972 double die obverse penny coin. The doubling on this coin is extraordinarily strong, seen on virtually every design aspect of the obverse, but nowhere quite so obvious than on the date, which shows doubling towards the northeast. Liberty is in turn doubled towards the south to very disorienting effect, and the spread is so wide that the letters of In God We Trust actually achieve full separation, with doubling displaying towards the left of all letters. The example we see here was sold at auction in 2022, slapped by PCGS as MS67 plus red, for which it sold for $17,437. 1972 is a bit of a dream issue for variety collectors, as there are just so many spectacular and even more minor varieties contained in just one issue. This coin, the FS 104 type, is easily one of the rarest of the bunch, identified by strong doubling on the letters of Liberty, though doubling is also found on the date and the letters of In God We Trust as well, with the doubling displaying towards the top, or stated more technically, in a clockwise orientation. In 2023, an example of this type, graded by PCGS as MS66 red, was sold at auction for the sum of $21,811. If you have a 1971 proof S. Eisenhower dollar, then you might want to double check it just to make sure, as this variety has not been widely known for, well, certainly not as long as some other coins on this list. The doubling here is noted on the reverse of the coin. It's actually seen in one form or another on most design elements, but it is most prominent on the stars just below the letters of America, where you can clearly see that they have been doubled. This stunning silver Ike was sold at auction in 2022, graded by PCGS as Proof 68 Deep Cameo, and raised $18,000 at auction. Going right to the beginning of the decade now, and one of the best varieties for this era. This is the 1970 S large date double die obverse penny. This is a surprisingly rare coin that is extremely underappreciated in a multitude of ways. Strong doubling is clearly seen on the letters of In God We Trust, where all the letters are doubled very strongly towards the left across the board, with the letters of Liberty also doubled very strongly towards the bottom, although slightly stronger towards the rim of the coin. During 2024, a coin like this, graded by PCGS as MS66 Red, was sold at auction for the amount of $38,400. But without a doubt, the top variety coin from the 1970s, and the most valuable one as well, simply has to be the 1975 No S proof dime. Now, just like the previous two No S coins that we looked at, this coin can be found in the 1975 proof set, and only in the 1975 proof set. The only catch is that, at least to date, only two of these proof coins that are missing the customary S mint mark from 1975 have ever been discovered, making them extraordinarily rare. But that still doesn't stop me from checking every 75 proof set I can get my hands on. In 2019, the finest known of these two coins was sold at auction, graded by PCGS with a grade of proof 68 for the astronomical amount of $456,000. A Washington $quarter coin that displays some very strong doubling on the reverse of the coin. This is the 1968D doubled reverse $quarter. The doubling on this coin is most evident on the letters of United States of America and on the denomination of $quarter, though other parts of the design remain affected as well. In 2023, this example of the coin was sold at auction, graded by PCGS as MS65 Plus. It sold for $1,856. Not every repunched mint mark coin has to be exactly subtle. There are a few where the initial and the final mint mark placements are so wide apart that they actually achieve full separation. This 1964D over D Washington $quarter is just such an example. What remains of the initial D mint mark punching can now be seen towards the northeast of the D mint mark, just below the knot uniting the two branches. In terms of the auction record, a nice coin like this was sold in 2015, graded as MS63 by PCGS for $3,547. The Lincoln penny has some spectacular varieties to offer from this decade as well. One of the more interesting of those is one that rarely seems to be mentioned though. This is the 1966 doubled reverse cent, has strong doubling on the letters on the reverse design, especially the letters of 1 cent, which can be spotted most easily on the 1. The designer's initials of FG are also doubled with particularly pleasing effect, though it is a part of the design that does require magnification in order to see properly. In 2023, a coin like this, graded by PCGS as MS62 Brown, was sold at auction for the amount of $4,111. A rare variety coin that only appears seldomly on the market is the 1964 D over D Kennedy half dollar. Now, to be clear, there are several varieties that answer to this name, and certainly a few that display stronger. But the coin under discussion now is the FS504 type, which appears to be a D over horizontal D repunched mint mark, though there is no genuine consensus as to the exact nature of the coin's origin. The initial D can be spotted as a faint outline towards the left and the top of the final D mint mark. Here we see an example of the coin graded by PCGS as MS64 that sold at auction in 2015 for the astonishing astonishing sum of $4,345, though prices for this variety do seem to be in somewhat of a decline since more examples have become known. As far as repunched mint marks go, the 1960s offer a multitude of options to choose from. Another enduringly popular one is to be found in the 1964 Jefferson nickel from the Denver Mint. Here, the initial D was struck in towards the south of the primary mint mark. You can still see what is left of the first punching directly towards the bottom of the D mint mark. This example of the coin was graded by PCGS and sold at auction during 2022 when it raised $19,800. Back to the beginning of the decade from there, to find what is easily the widest doubling in the Franklin half-dollar series, easily challenging the 51S for that particular title. This is the 1961 double die reverse proof half-dollar. The doubling can be seen on the letters of United in the form of extremely strong separation lines, as well as somewhat more prominently on the letters of the motto of E Pluribus Unum as well, where the doubling is definitely more pronounced. In 2021, an example graded by NGC as Proof 67 Ultra Cameo was sold at auction for $46,125. Following the tragic and untimely demise of President Kennedy, the design of the half-dollar coin was altered in record time, from the Franklin half-dollar to the now all-too-familiar Kennedy half-dollar coin. As numismatic legend has it, when the president's widow, Jackie Kennedy, was consulted about the design, she remarked that the president's hair needed to be more defined, so a few coins were struck with the accented hair details in place. This is an example of the coin graded by PCGS as Proof 69 Deep Cameo that was sold at auction in 2024 for $46,800. As we'll see in just a moment, the US Mint suspended production of the proof coins for a short time in the mid-1960s, before again resuming the practice in 1968 at the newly revamped San Francisco Mint. However, in all of the excitement and confusion, not everything went smoothly, and a number of dimes included in the 1968 proof sets were missing the customary S Mint mark that should appear just towards the top right of the date on the coins. This example of that design variety was graded by PCGS as Proof 69 Cameo, and during 2022 it was sold at auction for the sum of $50,132. In part, as a response to the national coin shortage of the early to mid-1960s, the US Mint suspended production of proof coins starting in 1965. But in an effort to at least attempt to appease the numismatic market, what are known as the special mint sets, or the SMS sets for short, were produced from 1965 to 1967. Better quality than the general business strike coins, but definitely not quite a proof coin either, falling somewhere in between the two. However, in the early 1990s, a number of coins started to surface that had the distinct characteristics of an SMS coin, but that were dated as 1964. Not too much is known for certain about these 1964 SMS coins, with mint records being suspiciously, but not entirely uncharacteristically silent on the matter. It is possible that they were early test strikes or even presentation coins. This example of the half-dollar coin graded by PCGS as SP68 was sold at auction in 2019 for the sum of $156,000. And as far as the rest of the elusive SMS coins from 1964, well, as technically they are not supposed to exist, they are all equally as sought after and valuable as well. This $quarter-dollar coin, graded by PCGS as SP67, was sold at auction in 2023 for the amount of $23,400. Going in order of denomination, the dime then would have to be next in line, and this example of the coin was offered at auction in 2019 from a complete 5-coin set of the issue that were all offered as individual coins, graded by PCGS as SP66. When it crossed the auction block, it raised $10,200. Then onto the Jefferson nickel, of which an example of the 1964 SMS coins was sold at auction in 2024. This coin is graded as MS68 with the full steps designation that you would also expect from the coin of this nature. It was sold for $41,231. And then, to round off the 1964 SMS set of coins to look for is this Lincoln cent. Here we can point to an example of the coin that was sold at auction in 2023. Graded by PCGS as MS65 red, by auction's end, it had sold for the amount of $18,000. And then naturally, the coin we've all been waiting for, and the most valuable variety coin from the 1960s, has to be the one and only 1969S double-die obverse Lincoln cent coin. Definitely the most famous coin from the decade and sought after by collectors. The doubling can be seen on all of the obverse letters of the coin, but the hallmark for this variety has to be the very characteristic doubling that is to be found on the date, where the numbers, but especially the 6 and the 2 9s, display with very dramatic effect. In 2023, this example of the coin, graded by PCGS as MS66 red, was sold at auction for the sum of $601,875. Subscribe to WNN and feel free to watch another video about the top 10 variety coins from the 1970s right here next. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.